you may well be feeling a little bit more comfortable with the measures that have been taken to protect you from being thrown out of your home if you are a renter and have lost your job or for whatever reason can't afford to pay your rent during this very uncertain financial time. But the fact is that that rent in most instances is not being put off. You're not having your rent waived. You are having it deferred. And so in a few months' time when things resume to whatever level of normal we can call it, there will be a mounting debt that you will have to pay. So when you have deferred debt, when you have these deferred payments, what do you have to be thinking about now to start dealing with that deferred debt? Because imagine coming out of this and not only trying to get back on your feet again, just trying to pay your normal bills, but trying to pay off that debt. Karyn Hicks is a financial counsellor with Salvation Army. Karyn, good afternoon.
Hi Sonia, how are you?
I'm well. Is this likely to be one of those kind of unexpected fallouts that's going to cause some issues for people?
Yeah, we do believe so. There's certainly a concern that there's some deferred payments that people have probably agreed to through this period because they have had a reduced income. But it's looking at the full understanding of what they've actually agreed to and the impact that's going to have on them in a few months down the track.
Are there rules, as far as you know, will this deferred debt be referred to in any other way? Like how soon will your obligation be to pay off that debt? What do we know about how that will be treated?
What we have with home loans is, like every bank can be slightly different, but what it looks to us to be is that the home loan won't be extended in any way to cover those deferred payments. Your interest would still be being charged at the moment and your interest, will be compounding interest on interest. So at the end of this hardship period, what we're going to see is people actually owing more than what they originally did when they got the hardship.
So they're not likely to just see the same amount of months added onto their loan?
No, from what we can see with some banks, just looking at a few of them, it's actually will be added back into your loan in turn, which will mean that the end date of your loan is staying the same, but your fortnightly or monthly repayments will increase to compensate for that extra money that's gone back into the loan.
So you will have to be prepared for that when
Yes.
that period of deferral ends.
Yeah, the deferred payments, it's been great for people that are struggling at the moment, but it certainly does have an impact down the track a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's just looking at how you're going to manage that, and it's that communication with the bank. There is a concern that clients aren't aware or people aren't quite 100% aware of what they've sort of agreed to and how they're going to manage that moving forward. So it's certainly having those conversations with the bank about how exactly is this going to be managed in the coming months.
Now, Karyn, that's obviously in relation to mortgages. How does it work for people who are renting, who have their rent deferred?
Renting, we'd encourage, and same with the mortgage, but we'd encourage people to sit down now, and if they are getting extra funds from the packages that the government offered, really having a look now at what they can actually afford to be paying. Could they actually afford to be paying a bit more towards their rent now? But it's looking at what's coming in and what's going out and having the conversation with the landlord. And we just strongly encourage people, the landlord may want you to pay a certain amount, but we've also got to look at what's actually affordable for you to pay. What they want you to pay may not be affordable for you to pay. It all will need to be repaid, but it is a negotiated thing. If people are feeling pressured, then there are avenues they can take through TS and places like that.
Do you think everyone who's renting understands that the rent is being deferred rather than waived? Because
Yeah.
I've spoken to a couple of landlords who said certainly the real estate people who look after their properties have said they're getting lots of calls from people who say, well, look, I don't have to pay my rent. I've been told the government, you can't evict me. And they're like, well, it's not being waived, it's just being deferred.
Yes, we spoke earlier on in the piece. I think there was some confusion around that at first when the government first announced it was a 6-month moratorium on evictions. It wasn't a moratorium on not having to pay your rent. And that's the message we've been trying to get out to people is you still need to pay your rent. If you can't afford to pay your rent, it's paying something towards your rent and having those conversations with your landlord about where you're at the moment and your situation, because everybody's situation is different. But yeah, it's certainly not. And if people are thinking that way, it's certainly a message that needs to get out there that they will have to pay their rent.
One of our texters says the ANZ allows you to extend the loan so your repayment stays the same.
Yep.
But from what you're saying, Karyn, that's an individual bank. It's not across the board.
Yeah, all banks are different. And when you look at the banks, and banks will do things also on an individual basis as well, what's specific to your needs as well. So sometimes they will extend it by 6 months or 3 months, however long you've taken out. But it's certainly something to talk to your bank about what they're doing. One bank I was looking at today, they certainly are keeping your mortgage end date the same, and will just be adding it back in and increasing your repayments each fortnight or month, however you repay it.
I'm talking with Karyn Hicks. She's a financial counsellor with Salvation Army, helps people sort of reprioritise and get sorted out in relation to these their changing circumstances, and there's no doubt that many people will be in very changing circumstances at the moment. Karyn, why do you say, because when things are tight, people might be trying to hold on to as much money as they possibly can. When you say pay as much as you can afford towards your rent, why is that preferable than holding out a few months?
It's all about having a money plan as well and seeing what's affordable for you. So it's really sitting down and working out how much have I got coming in and how much have I got going out. But rent and like your basic needs are one of your priority things that needs to be paid. We really need to maintain a roof over our heads. So rent and your mortgage and like your basic utilities and food is always first priority of payments. So when we're looking at things, we would look at the hierarchy of how we're going to pay our bills, of who gets what, and rent is certainly very high up there on that list.
And if you aren't able to do that, or if you don't do that, what's the danger at the end of however many months this will be allowed for?
Yeah, well, after the moratorium on evictions is lifted, and if you can't come to an agreement, and if you are in arrears and can't continue to pay, then you are at risk of being evicted from your property. Of course, there is a process that needs to happen to be evicted from your property. So, yeah, but that's sort of what would happen if you couldn't pay your rent or you were too much in arrears. Because once you get a long way behind in your rent, and the stimulus package of the $550 extra each fortnight that some people are getting, once that's gone, it would be how are people actually going to be able to manage to repay this large debt they've got to their landlord when they're possibly struggling to pay their fortnightly rent anyway.
Karyn, if someone's listening to you now and is having trouble prioritising all that money, what sort of help is there to get help on that?
Financial counsellors can help with having a look at what's coming in and what's going out, and just talking about lots of options, and there's a lot of pros and cons with the options as well. So certainly, like, you can contact the Salvation Army, where I'm from, the Moneycare program, 1800-722-363, or you can contact the National Debt Helpline, which is the 1800-007-007 number, and just have a chat with someone, because everybody's individual circumstances is different. So we like to, everything's done for a certain person. So while we give out generic information and that we, to sit down and chat with someone, and it can also relieve a lot of the financial pressure that people are feeling at the moment.
1800-722-363.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
The first thing we always do with a client is just sit down, work out what their situation is, and look at what's coming in and what's going out, specific to their household.
Because we do live in a society at the moment, don't we, where we think we can just push debt forward. That's what credit cards are all about too. That we build up this debt and we push it forward and maybe out of sight, out of mind a little bit. Yeah.
And unfortunately, this what's happening at the moment, we've never seen this sort of situation before. And, moving forward, just like to ensure people are sort of aware of what the situation is and how they can sort of go about assisting themselves to move forward and what should be paid and how, what have I signed up for and what are my repayments going to be once this period of hardship finishes, and how does that actually fit into my household budget?
Now, Karyn, before we let you go, one quick text question. One of our texters says, does the bank, going back to mortgages, charge a fee if you choose to defer or extend the date on your loan?
For deferred payments, that's a period of hardship, and there's usually a no charge for hardship period. Extending your loan, I'm not too sure on that, because whether they would look at it as a total refinance or something like that. But if it's just extending a loan period, there shouldn't be any charge on that. And if there was, I'd certainly get them to speak to someone if they're being charged for that.
Karyn, thanks.
Speak to a financial counsellor to have a look at what they've been charged for.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us on the program. Something definitely to think about if you find yourself in that position, in this current situation. The Moneycare hotline is 1800 722 363, just one of the financial counselling services you could access if you are struggling to prioritise on that level or have some concerns about that.